Yesterday, we heard so many cool things, I can't list them all. Tom Cornwell's home visits that reduced ER trips from double digits to 0 in one patient. That was just amazing. And Anneka Sederström's moral distress rounds should be in every training program in the country, I think. I bet most of you would agree with that. And the co-creation of community conversations about healthcare in Buffalo that Katie Grimm and Reverend Davis told us about, that was the real deal. And the workshops, they had so much energy. I've been hearing about them all morning. And Ben Moulton this morning told me, I started cynical, then I got depressed, and then I was inspired. Every session put my hair on fire. If patients could see what's going on here, millions of them would come. So I have deep admiration for the work that all of you are doing. And I genuinely feel very humbled to be in front of you, but also very proud that we brought all of you together. People have been asking me how things are going. How are they going in this work? And I tell them, I think we've laid a strong foundation for a national network for change. And now it's time to grow it fast. Programs like Right Care Rounds, which will again reach thousands of residents this year, are critical for building the network and the comprehensive counter-narrative that we need. This morning, I want to share some of my thoughts about strategy in a society that's aching for change. Now, it's become de rigueur, I've noticed, in these events, public events, to start with a story. And I was going to tell you one about how outraged I was when I had to scramble to fill a small bridging prescription and get here in Chicago, and I ended up paying $12 for 3 pills for a generic beta blocker. But when my teenage daughter heard that, she said, "Geez, Dad, you're going to sound like a cranky old man." Okay, so I'll spare you. I've been traveling around the country, and everywhere I hear indictments of a system where care is undermined by overuse and lack of access, and where profit trumps health, and too often trumps common sense itself. In that system, a proliferating arms race is underway, fueled by technologies of unproven value, like proton beam machines, or fancy genetic screening tests, and by drugs of astronomical cost and dodgy efficacy. When we do all the math, you know what we get. We get $1 trillion of waste in the system. As Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders would say, it's huge. As I travel around the country, I hear more and more people struggling to contain the corrosion of the sacred relationship that should be at the center of healing. I see the technical solutions that align incentives and promote best practices. I hear calls for new regulatory and administrative frameworks. I see the earnest, heroic efforts to invent the necessary solutions, and they create many wonderful projects that show what can be done. But I also hear the gospel of the achievable, spoken in the language of the incremental. I'm here to say that's inadequate. I accept it, but with little enthusiasm, because it's not good enough. I'm here to tell you that we can do better than that, If we want health, we need to take back healthcare. Some of you may have seen our animated video about overuse that was made for us by a company called Epifio. If you haven't seen it, you should take a look. I like it a lot. It's on our website. Well, they loved our mission so much, they made a second film as a donation to the cause. And I'd like to show it to you now.
I swear to fulfill, to the best of my ability and judgment, this covenant. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures which are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being whose illness may affect the person's family and economic stability. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I will remember that there is art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or chemist's drug. May I always act so as to preserve the finest traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live, and remembered with affection thereafter.
You should know that they hesitated to ask the actor whose voice you hear because his wife had recently died of cancer. But when they did, he agreed, and he did it in one take. And then he began to weep. He wept out of gratefulness for the doctors and nurses who cared for his wife. He said the Hippocratic oath that you heard on the soundtrack moved him to tears. And then he thanked the producer for allowing him to participate in such an important project. That's what's at stake if we don't take back healthcare. Many of you know the story of how I got started in this work. I called Shannon back in 2010. I'd read her book, and the first time we spoke, I said, "You should do something." And she said, "Like what?" And I said, I thought she was at a think tank in Washington. I said, "Well, I don't know, convene a meeting or something." Shannon, I've never told you this, but I have to confess I was really hoping you would do it by yourself. Because it seemed like a gamble, and I sensed it might be a lot of work. Of course, in reality, what I was doing, I was just turfing it to her. It was only when I called the second time a few months later, and nothing had happened, that I said, okay, maybe we can do something together. And that's how all of this got started. Two people, two phone calls, sharing an idea. The truth is, neither one of us would ever or could ever have done this by ourselves. The truth of the matter is, we needed each other to do this work. And it's the same with the work we've been talking about this weekend. We need each other. We need each other because more and more of us are cynical and burned out. So many people have said to me, what you're doing is really noble. And of course, you're right. But I'm just trying to get through the next few years till my kids are out of college, and I'm out. We need each other because increasingly in healthcare, each of us is feeling alone. In exam rooms, in labs, at bedsides, in break rooms, in our cars on the way to work, we're suffering in silence. Anything that can't be translated into the language of metrics and next steps can't be spoken at all. So for our truest dreams, we're left to imagine them privately, whispered in the darkness of diminished expectations. We fear they would sound too silly if uttered aloud in the church of the achievable. We've convinced ourselves that a dream of magnificent, satisfying work is far, far beyond what is or ever could be. And so we keep it to ourselves. And in so doing, we slowly lose it. When we do, we risk losing more than our dreams. We risk losing our own true selves. We shouldn't be this lonely. And that is the problem with healthcare today. Now, I know that none of us has lost the ability to envision a better world. I strongly suspect, in fact, I'm willing to bet, that what each and every one of us dreams alone is often the same dream. But we wouldn't know it, and we won't know it unless we speak up. And that's scary. It's scary because it risks ridicule. It looks unserious. And we desperately want to be seen as serious professionals. But we must stop dreaming alone. We must speak the unspoken and invite everyone around us to do the same. Yesterday, we heard Jeff Brenner say that he couldn't do anything about massive income inequality as a single-family doctor. And he was right. But when did we lose the idea of organized collective action? During this conference, we've heard what extraordinary things one physician or one nurse or one citizen can do. What could several of us achieve? Imagine what 1,000 people could do for healthcare in your city in 1 year. Now, imagine 1 million of us. So at the risk of sounding ridiculous right now, let me lead the way. Because if I start, maybe some of you will join me. What should healthcare look like? What should it feel like for patients and for health workers? First of all, imagine if everyone in the country had health care. I mean, everybody in and nobody out. No exceptions, no enrollment periods, real coverage for actual health care for everybody. The undocumented, the homeless, the imprisoned. No political squabbling, just health care. Health care for all. Why don't we have that? What could a great system do to move more care to the home? What if everyone who needed home visits got them? The systems that Tom Cornwell and Joanne Lynn have told us about, they need to be built and built fast. What if more of us had the option for childbirth at home? Many moms and dads and grandparents would love it if we could make it safe. And we can, according to an OB training I was talking to, but didn't want to be quoted till after graduation. And what if everyone in America had the opportunity to skip the last few futile chemotherapies if we were given a real choice and could die at home, surrounded by our beloved families? In this political season, think about this. 75% of the country wants to be able to die at home with dignity, but only 32% do. Why is that? What could a truly great system do to deliver more care to our neighborhoods? What if a trusted and respected team of community health workers and community nurses did regular rounds in each and every neighborhood in the country and could check in on the elderly or new infants or the injured? Imagine that. And what if that nurse worked from a local health station where the primary care team was within walking distance, where the doctors and nurses and the receptionists knew us by sight and knew our names? Imagine what else that nurse could do. Not just medication reviews or post-op checks, but also nutritional and lead screening, housing and mental health assessments. If we wanted to unify public health and clinical care, there's the place to do it, in our homes, in our neighborhoods. We know it can be done. Why don't we have it? Now imagine if doctors and nurses could win back the time to listen and to be present with the technology in the background and the healing relationship front and center. Imagine that. That's my dream. As Bob Dylan said, I'll let you be in my dream if I can be in yours. Would all of that be enough? We know that even a perfect healthcare system won't give us perfect health, but it would be a start. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from Ryan Miley, who's going to talk about how we can go upstream and improve health itself. And to Phil Thompson, who'll talk about organizing in communities to get the right care. We absolutely have to come together to figure this out. And now is the time to dream big. Never has there been a greater moral imperative for action. Look around at the society we're living in. Look at the isolation and despair. Look at the disengagement and disempowerment of communities. Call it a deficit of participation. Call it a deficit of democracy. How does that affect healthcare? How does that affect our health? As much as we have all been talking about change, I don't think we really recognize how big a change is possible. I'm here to tell you that conditions for change have never been better. Here's why. For a very long time, the public have been putting up with a system that costs too much, makes them wait, and doesn't meet their needs. But as millions struggle to pay their bills, that tolerance will not last. Meanwhile, health is deteriorating for large numbers of Americans. Death rates for white, middle-aged, working-class men and women have been rising, just like they did in the last days of the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, the long-standing disparity in life expectancy for black men, incontrovertible proof of structural racism, persists. And just last week, a study showed that there have been gains in life expectancy in the past decade. It's just that they've all gone to the top income bracket. And please note in that study, poor access to health care wasn't a significant factor. Health, to remind you of the WHO definition, is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, but is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. That is one of the most deeply subversive phrases I know. Almost as subversive as the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We know where 80% of health comes from. It comes from decent food. It comes from a place to live that's warm and safe. It comes from education. It comes from a decent job that pays for our basic needs, and more than that, gives us meaning in our lives. We've known that for years. Imagine how much health $1 trillion could buy us. We could cut class size in half for all of America's children. We could provide free, universal child care for all of America's working parents. We could provide job training for all of America's unemployed and underemployed. How about protecting our water supply? How about a massive effort to deal with climate change before Mother Nature deals with us? Just think about the kind of society we could have. Imagine that. Through the Right Care Alliance, we at the Lown Institute are seeking to build a mass movement that can imagine the health system we all want and need, and then galvanize the action to create it. Later this morning, we're going to hear from Shannon about the work we're doing to make that possible and how you can get involved. So let me close by saying that in this political year, it's clear we're entering an era in which the status quo cannot and will not stand much longer. The winds of change are definitely blowing. Polls are showing that the vast majority of Americans, the vast majority on both sides of the political spectrum, are hungry for big change, for real change. People are ready to move forward. People are looking for leadership. In a moment like this, in the wealthiest country in the world, our greatest risk is a failure of imagination, a failure to dream big. It's a moral imperative that we get organized because now is the time to build a new system and make the old one obsolete. I want to ask all the students in the crowd, trainees, any of you early in your career, could you please just raise your hands? I just want to see many. Wonderful. Well, I have a special message for all of you. I know that making your way in healthcare is really hard when you're starting out. There are so many ways you can screw up, and there's so much you don't know. But remember this, there's also so much you do know. And you should hold on to that tightly. You know what decency is. You know why you went into the healing professions. You know when something is just wrong. I have no doubt that it's your energy and your idealism that will power us through to the change we need. You are going to remake a world because that world is going to be yours. Who in the audience has children or grandchildren? Great. All of you, all of us, we have an enormous stake in what happens next. The thing that is magical, the thing that surprises and amazes us, is how our problems are so much easier to solve when we have someone beside us. Because as human beings, that's who we are. We really need each other. Isn't that why in any society the true measure of justice is how we take care of one another? And nowhere is that more true than in healthcare. Nowhere else in modern life are we so close to, so aware of our fragile, mortal selves. Patients and nurses and doctors know that. Together, all of us can organize and mobilize the many, many people who share our dream. Together, we can launch a movement to take back healthcare and to reclaim health itself. We have a vision. Our dreams have real power, and people are ready. So let's dream big. Let's share it with the whole world, and let's create that future together. Thank you.